latest reports that there is some sort of difference between the Trump administration, Pete Hegseth, and what was reported on CNN, on Reuters. CNN reported 80% of the THAAD missile interceptors were depleted during the war between the United States and Iran, and something like 50% of the Patriot system interceptors as well. And the other report was what Reuters reported, and it was reported that the ATACMS and prisms, these offensive missiles have been depleted as well, close to, it's critical right now, the situation with
Yes.
offensive missiles. And then you see the reaction from Pete Hegseth saying that that doesn't have anything to do with the reality. They don't know anything about it. Then Donald Trump saying in Wall Street, they're leaking these things. You have to go after those people who are leaking this information to the media. What is, Ted, your understanding of what's going on with these missiles, interceptors, and the calculation on the part of the Trump administration?
Well, first of all, it's important to keep in mind that it's not clear. In fact, from my perspective, it's pretty clear that these interceptors have not done much in the way of changing the outcome of the war in terms of material. I mean, there's an important psychological uh, aspect to missile defense, and uh, that is the way I personally have been able to explain from my own understanding why missile defense has been so persistent as an activity, at least in the American military activities. Understandably, and I do think it's understandable from the point of just uh, existential reaction. People want to be able to defend themselves, and missile defense is no different from any other defensive system. You build walls around castles, you build moats, and unfortunately, in the case of missile defense, when you are shooting at airplanes, the technology has gotten to a point that the missile defenses can be the anti-aircraft defenses can be quite formidable now. I mean, you can really get very high intercept rates, which are quite extraordinary. But if you're shooting at ballistic missiles, uh, it doesn't look like any of the technologies we have been using have come close to addressing the real problem. And the real problem is that the crossing speeds between the interceptor and the target are so high. And this is easy to understand conceptually because let's take an example of a ballistic missile coming from Iran into, let's say, Israel or even the Persian Gulf, because the attacking missile can be lofted and get high speeds at the target area. So the arrival speed can easily be 3.5 kilometers per second if you're if it's a ballistic missile. Now the interceptor itself is traveling at 1.5 kilometers per second. So you're traveling at your crossing speeds are about 5 kilometers per second. So now if we're 5 kilometers apart, you're only 1 second from trying to hit the front end of this, because the only way you can have any chance of hitting the front end is to attack from the front, which is why whenever you can actually see an intercept engagement, which is rare, things are coming from the front at the target that they're trying to hit. Now, at 5 kilometers, you just don't have the resolution to tell where exactly the missile is. And since you only have 1 second, even if you can tell at 2.5 or 3 kilometers where the front of the missile is, you only then have less than a half second to make the maneuver. And if you're the interceptor, the way you maneuver is you change your angle of attack. And it takes time to rotate the missile to get the lift. And so there's what's called a response time associated with each kind of interceptor. This is why the Patriot PAC-3 was invented relative to the PAC-2. The PAC-3 has a ring of 180 little rocket motors around the front end that explosively drive the interceptor into an angle of attack where it can get lift on a very short notice because the wings at the back are not forceful enough, cannot develop enough lift to rotate the interceptor quickly enough. So they put these very expensive and very exotic rocket motors in a ring of 180 of them, so they can blow them up to get the interceptor to suddenly change its orientation. So the real question is it enough? And there really would be no way of, I could not, I mean, I have estimates I've done of this, but to be honest, the estimates are close enough that you cannot rule out that you could occasionally hit a target that you're trying to get at. So the only way to really know, and the only way the contractor, the organization that builds these things, is to test. And it's very clear now because we have videos of engagements, and we have numerous numbers of incoming warheads, and we only see, on a rare occasion, out of 50 or 50 incoming warheads, you'll see one detonate, and we can clearly see them detonate. So if we were looking at the sky and there were a lot of successful intercepts, like the 90%, they're claiming near 90% intercept rates, the sky would look like a fireworks. Bam, bam, bam. It would look like a fireworks display of the most spectacular kind because these fireballs would be very large and very bright. Instead, you see just the warheads coming in, and occasionally you see a very dramatic flash in the sky from a single intercept. And so what happens is, if you do the arithmetic as best you can, because we don't have all the engagements, you come up with a 2 or 3% intercept rate at best. So that's this much more expensive $4 million a shot PAC-3 interceptor. So the bottom line is you're spending fantastic amounts of money to make a very small number of intercepts. So you're really not reducing the levels of damage from the kinds of massed attacks or even the singular attacks. We have lots and lots and lots of video. This is not the Gulf War of 1991. We have all these people out who have video cameras in their telephones. Those video cameras are extraordinarily capable. They have very good light collecting capability and very good resolution. And so we have oodles of videos, unlike we had during the Gulf War of 1991, where all we could use were the videos taken by television camera crews who were on tops of buildings. Now we have them from all over the place. So we have a enormous amount of data. And as I've shown in a previous program, we could show it again at some time if people are really interested. You can see just warheads coming in, occasionally dramatic. So these explosions are not something you would miss if you know what you were doing. This is not, it's just not like you're not seeing them. You would see this as a fantastic fireworks display over Tel Aviv or Haifa or over a Persian Gulf U.S. military base. You don't see it. So the system's not working. So, and it's not been working throughout this war. And it's not been working over Ukraine as well. So there's all this mythology. So there's, from the point of view of the Ukrainians, the NATO, they don't have air defenses, even if they're running out of interceptors. It's like they're having the wrong argument. The emperor has no clothes, and they're arguing about whether the emperor is wearing a silk tie or a wool tie. There's no tie. The emperor's naked. So And of course, they're screaming to have more interceptors, which of course their manufacturing capacity is unable to produce. But it doesn't matter. There is no result that will change the outcome, even if they could manufacture these interceptors at a fantastic rate, much higher than they're able to do. So the air defenses are no longer very useful against ballistic missile targets. Just that simple. And they haven't been. This is not new. It's just that there's been so much concealment of damage, particularly on the part of the Israelis, who've done a very good job hiding the damage. But we know the damage in Israel is very, very substantial because we know from statements that Netanyahu has made to Trump that, he's as worried, or maybe in some statements he's actually made that we know about. He's actually said to Trump, you need to do something about the ballistic missiles more than the nuclear weapons challenge, because the ballistic missiles are have done very substantial damage to Israel already. So if this thing escalates to Iran going back to attacking Israel on a regular basis, like was done earlier in this war, the levels of damage are going to be extraordinary. And Iran has already been successful in basically closing down the military bases operated by the United States in the Persian Gulf. They're depopulated. They have all these soldiers and hotels, and this has had an effect on the policies of the Gulf states. I mean, we're already seeing Saudi Arabia look at whether or not its policy of aggressively opposing Iran is viable, whether they should have a softer, more flexible approach to Iran. We've seen this. Pakistan, Iran, and Turkey now have a mutual defense agreement. We don't know exactly what it looks like, but it does look like it could be very strong.
Pakistan, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia.
So I'm sorry, yeah, and Pakistan,
Pakistan,
and these kinds of mutual defense arrangements are unequivocally due to the demonstrated damage-inflicting power that Iran has shown it can inflict with ballistic missiles and drones. The drones can inflict their damage in a different way. The drones can be intercepted. The capabilities of these interceptors because the crossing speeds are not extremely high, and so the intercept rates can be very high. But a $4 million interceptor against a $30,000 drone is not a winning equation, even if you're the United States. You can't afford to, and plus the adversary can build unlimited numbers of drones because they're so inexpensive that they can be built in enormous numbers. Plus, the drones have reprogramming capability. So the drones have the ability to receive information as they're flying toward a target through satellite links. So I have a drone and it's coming in to attack an air defense system. The air defense system detects the drone, tracks it, and destroys it. The drone, I know the drone has been destroyed because I have communication with the drone. So now I have another drone coming in, and it is just coming in. It's not been assigned a target to attack yet. And I say to it, okay, the target that this earlier drone was attacking managed to shoot it down. So this is now your new target. And if you shoot that drone down, there's another drone behind it that gets reassigned. So this is a very efficient system. In other words, I don't have to launch 10 drones in the hope that one's going to get through. I can launch 3 or 4 or 5 drones with the understanding that sooner or later this defensive system is going to be out of interceptors. It's going to not be able to engage any more incoming targets. So the efficiency with which I can overwhelm the air defense is astronomically higher than just randomly coming in and overwhelming with numbers. This is a devastating capability with regard to the future of air defenses. I right now I'm not sure I know what to say about the future of air defenses. They may be unviable, but at some level you have to have them, I think. But I don't know how you do it. I honestly don't know. Now you can have more guns because drones are slow moving and they can be engaged with anti-aircraft guns. But the interceptor part of air defenses, very hard to see how they can be useful in the indefinite future, especially as the drones improve in their ability to be reprogrammed, to communicate with satellite systems. They can't be they initially could be easily jammed, but the satellite communication systems are now getting much more sophisticated in their ability to be unjammable or be very difficult to jam. And as long as these drones can maintain some level of communication, it's going to be hellish to maintain an air defense systems against them. So the drones are a completely different technical problem, but they are an overwhelming problem. And the ballistic missiles are another completely different technical problem, but they also defeat the air defense interceptors. So I think we are seeing a crisis in the future of air defense systems and what we will have to do to make them workable.
Ted, let me bring one of the videos that you sent me before,
Sure,
and
absolutely.
which could help us to understand what you're talking about. Here is, let me just check it out here, because we have these videos showing
Yeah,
how the
sure.
interceptors are getting to. Yeah, here is the video.
Here you go. You see all these missiles coming in. You see flashes from the ground. There's an intercept there, which is in the video later explained. But you should see flashes like of that kind all over the sky if this system was intercepting ballistic missiles. But it's not. So, and here in this additional, you see these missiles coming in. They're flashes, but the flashes are from the explosions of the warheads on the ground, not in the sky. You should see them in the sky. All right, here's the same sequence shown earlier, and it's going to have a sudden slowdown. There are 3 warheads in a row you're seeing, and it suddenly slows down, and you see this tremendous flash in the sky. When we slow it down, it's much easier to see. And then we're going to see only 2 of the 3 ballistic missiles coming through. So it did destroy one of the ballistic missiles, but everything else just went to the ground and exploded. This is absolutely unambiguous data on what is actually happening with regard to the explosions. The videos are telling you what the physical reality of what is happening is going on. In this particular video, you're going to see 4 flashes on the ground, but no flashes in the sky. This is a slow motion. In this particular video, toward the end, we're going to see submunitions being displayed. This is a flash on the ground that lights up the clouds from the ground. And then we see this missile come in. The missile leaves a trail of submunitions. It hits the ground and it explodes too. So this was a complicated warhead that was carrying cluster munitions and a unitary munition, a single munition that hit the ground and exploded. But once we watch we can see this more slowly when the light diminishes and you see the cluster munitions being dispensed. Those are tiny cluster munitions When they hit the ground, they're going to explode. And if you're on the ground and you're, a few feet from it, you're going to be badly injured or killed. So, and they're going to be all over the ground, falling down on the ground. So you got hit twice from this particular warhead because it dispensed these submunitions. Here you see a single warhead coming in. You don't see any intercept. Here again, we're going to see an intercept, but we don't see any explosions in the sky. First, there's an interceptor dives to the ground, and then we're going to see in slow motion, that's an explosion. So that's what you should be seeing in the sky, but you don't, it's unique. Everything else is on the ground. All the explosions are on the ground. So even when you don't have an intense attack, in other words, large numbers of interceptors coming in at once, you still are not hitting the ballistic missiles. So you're not just, this is evidence that you don't even have to overwhelm the defense with large numbers of interceptors in order to defeat it. If they come in at a very low rate, none of these things are detonated. You don't see these big explosions in the sky. They just don't occur. So here is, of course, the accelerated interceptor, the Fatah interceptor, and you see this tremendous explosion from the kinetic energy as well as the explosive payload. And you even see a shock wave propagating out. This explosion is so intense, you see a shock wave propagating from it. This was here again, you're going to see sudden jerking maneuvers on the part of the warhead. The ground should be jerking around too, but it's not. So that's showing you that the warhead is maneuvering. You can't intercept that because you don't know where the warhead's going to be. It takes you tens of seconds to get. Here's another case where the warhead is gyrating in the sky. You can't intercept that because it takes you seconds to figure out where you're going to try to hit it. And this thing is moving unpredictably. Here is an image of a warhead that is in powered flight at very high altitude. You can't predict where to intercept that with a THAAD interceptor because it's powered. It's going. The time it takes you to know where to make the intercept is too long for you to know where to play. And here again, you're going to see a train of objects coming in. And here you'll see one intercept, and I'll identify it for you. As things go on, in real time, we see an intercept identified. There it is. You can't tell easily, but I repeat the train coming in, and I stop at the intercept, and then frame by frame show you the explosion. That now, if the interceptors, the sky would be lit with these kinds of explosions. It would, be fireworks display. So there are, no intercepts. The rate, you see dozens and scores of missiles coming in, and only a few intercepts out of the scores. So you're talking about, an intercept out of 30 or 50 warheads coming in. Well, that's a 3% or 2 or 3% intercept rate. That's not good. That is not a system that's working. It is not doing the job you want an air defense to do. So I think the game is over, and they've concealed this fact from the people who are, watching this go on. The American people, I'd say the Israeli population as well. But so you listen to somebody on national public radio, and the guy says, well, there's a 95% intercept rate, but there's still a lot of damage being done. So maybe there are more ballistic missiles coming in than we think. Well, use your head. Maybe the interceptors are not intercepting them. It's just bizarre how these journalists. I mean, one of the shocking things is how I don't mean to be nasty, but I want to say it in a dramatic, in an honest, how illiterate these people are. How, uh, you know, I'm stunned at the. There are some journalists you deal with, and these people are unbelievably sharp, and they pick up things immediately when you're talking to them. But so many of these journalists are just people who have been trained to read the news, not to understand it. So somebody's telling them there's a 90% intercept rate, and they never think to, well, what are you seeing? Use your eyes. It's not like I'm invisible. Call me. I can send you the videos. I can talk you through them. Your audience now understands what I'm talking about. So I know your audience understands because I've showed these videos in other presentations, and I get feedback. People write me notes. They understand what they're looking at when they have the help of somebody to explain what they're seeing. There's no, it's easy to understand why they don't understand what they're seeing because you need to know what you're looking for and looking at. But when somebody explains it to you, it's not hard to understand. And I don't get any phone calls from mainstream journalists. None. It's like I don't exist. Yet, it can't be that they're that dense, or maybe they are. I just don't know. But it's really a sad statement about the quality of analytical capability in at least television reporters and also in the press reporters. Look at the data. It's all I'm doing. They thought I was a quack during the Gulf War of 1991. They were saying, "Oh, this guy quack. He's a professor at MIT, but he's got some pointy head. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's got some agenda." It took enormous amounts of effort before it finally happened that all of a sudden people started to understand this. But now, there's a history. There have been papers written about the work I did with my wonderful colleague George Lewis, who I'm very sorry to report he died last week, and it's really a sad situation for me. But my wonderful, enormously talented colleague George Lewis and I, discovered all this and laid it all out in papers. And other people have written papers analyzing what we did. The American Physical Society did a comprehensive panel analysis of our work and found nothing at all to be corrected or criticized. Nothing. Perfect score, 100%. And so all a journalist has to do is read these papers, call me up, and ask me to explain what's going on. And you don't need 10 years of college to understand it if you have somebody explain what they're looking at. And instead, they continue reporting 90% intercept rates. And I can tell you for sure that Lockheed Martin and Raytheon are loving this because they reported a 96% intercept rate in the Gulf War of 1991. The president didn't know. President George H.W. Bush did not know. And his Secretary of Defense, Dick Cheney, also did not know. So both these people at the highest levels of the U.S. government did not know that the system that they were bragging about was a total failure. Now, they were embarrassed. There were reports. I don't know if it's true. At that time, I still had clearances for secret information, and I heard from a journalist that Dick Cheney was angry about my report, and he was talking about how he could get my clearances pulled.